with no faith. All our events are free. Our name combines two words, rainbow, representing our diverse community, and Bodhi, the concept of enlightenment. We believe in inclusion, compassion, and wisdom. And now I'll hand the time over to Carl.
Hi everyone, my name is Kyle. Today I will be doing a sharing. How is my queerness got to do with Buddhism? And if this is the first time that you met me or online or offline, well, let's just put it this way. This Dharma sharing is very different because I'm gay. So that means this sharing will be gayer than most Dharma sharing or Dharma event. I guess maybe it will be more happy and we are definitely a little bit more, open, and we are not having this kind of very, formal way of doing the sharing. So without further ado, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to put on the chat, but we would have a time to allocate for Q&A. So now I'm going to share my screen, and please let me know if you can see it. Can anyone see the screen? Good.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So now, so what has my queerness got to do with Buddhism? When the Buddha first started teaching, right? He did the first teaching, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Paths. And that was in the Deer Park, Satnav. And funny enough is that, somehow or other, we know that for all Buddhists, we know that life contains inevitable, unavoidable suffering. But how does it apply to the LGBTQ community? So somehow or other, we have this idea that, as long as, we are queer, we are, somehow always been creative, funny, then probably that is how we brand ourselves in that sense of manner that our life can somehow, live a little bit more easy or, somehow a little bit more joyful to spread happiness and joy around our environment. But in actual fact, it's really not. Most of the time we face, especially the people, who are in the LGBTQ community, that we face different types of discrimination. For example, since young, when I was actually from the 80s, most of the time, because my mannerism is always a bit more feminine, so I suffer a lot of bullying and I suffer from a lot of, anxiety from going to school because I'm not too sure how people will react, and it was somehow a very, how to say, good and bad because I met people who really accept me for who I am. So I'm always the friends of a lot of the Bella in school. So my good friends back in my days are all the pretty girls. And somehow I was very safe from a lot of bullying because the girls will always stand up for me. So I'm always very, very grateful for them all the time. But also because sharing, the struggles in our community is not just that. For example, a lot of time we actually face this hidden, repressed, suppressed kind of feelings of hoping no one will find out that I am, gay, or hoping no one will find out my sexuality, because there's a part of me that always feel unsafe to be out to everyone. So this struggles becomes even more real when I started Rainbodhi Singapore, and a lot of our, members from our community, they feel even awkward and weird if they talk to me too closely, because they feel like if they talk to me too closely, they might expose their sexuality. And this is really legit. It really happens just that 2 weeks ago when someone felt that if they talk too friendly with me, they might be exposed, their sexuality would be exposed. So this is something where, a lot of our straight friends do not have that part of the challenges and struggles. And most of the time back in the 80s, media portrayal of gay people, homosexual people is really non-existent. It's not like now there is Netflix, where a lot of time you have Queer Eyes, you have the documentary or you have like, movies. So at my time, that the struggle was basically, there was no struggle because you just have to be non-existent. So your assistant is a non-existent back in those days. And I really felt that, a lot of times that the transgender community back in those days are so brave and so courageous to stand up and be who they really are. So I really applaud, and hopefully, I know they might not have any transgender at our sharing today, but I really feel like I need to acknowledge them for their bravery, who just show themselves out there without, letting anyone feels like, that they are wrong or they are just, a weird figure. And for me, this is not just all, if I can just share with you a little bit more on the next slides. Everyone can see the next slides? Good? Okay. So, so I said that, in our community struggle with bullying as well. And a lot of times people actually find it very, very hard to, like stand up for themselves, because the more they stand up for themselves, the more attractions and attention they're going to get. So most of us usually just bear it and do it in silence. And as you can see on the on the screen right now, at least 52% of the LGBTQ young people had faced some kind of bullying, and one in three says that they were bullied in person. So what I'm trying to say that is, this thing is very real for our community, because most of our time, those who actually felt that they cannot hide their behavior, their mannerism, it's always been the one being the clown in the school and being laughed at. So that's one thing that is very problematic. And then also family rejection. So a lot of times, that if we come up to our family and if we do not have any preparations on how the family is going to be supportive, sometimes we face a lot of rejection, and the rejections is not something like, oh, just one-time rejection, the girl don't like me, the boy don't like me. No, it is a very serious kind of rejection where you feel like it's like the end of the world, where your family actually abandon you, and you don't feel any support from the family. And most of the time, like, you are really lost, and sometimes you might actually go to a very, very dark dark mental state as well. And if we do not have the right mindset, and also, the right kind of support, or anyone who can do a little bit of reach out, depression and suicide is something, sorry, a warning first, that, for people to know about this thing is, our community are very prone to suicidal. And most of the times, it's not because they want it, but it's mostly because they are in that fear and the anxiety, that they feel threatened, that, to let people find out their sexuality. So a lot of times when they feel threatened that people expose their sexuality, sometimes they go to a very, very dark place. And of course, if you do not find a better way to release that stress and anxiety, drug and alcohol is usually a kind of next better thing to relieve from your emotions. And that is somehow that the avoidance comes, I can't face the truth, so I can use drugs and alcohol to so-called numb my pain and numb my sorrows. Even though these so-called statistics and numbers are from the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, but this is nothing compared with what I'm going to show you on the next slide, because this is about in general, right? In general, not within the Buddhist community. How about in the Buddhist community? Does the LGBTQ people face certain kind of discrimination? So this is data or survey we have done previously during a Awaken Challenge. And from our survey, our community faced homophobic statements. And when every time they talk about something, they are being silenced and ignored. And they were also told that gender identity and sexual orientations wasn't in line with Buddha's teaching. And there are also a bit of transphobic statements. And for me, I'll give you a very good example. I volunteer as a Buddhist temple guide. So my job is to bring people to the temple and share with them the different, the Bodhisattva, the Buddha's images, the background, and a little bit of the history. And a few times in my past, some of them have come to me and say that, Kyle, your tour is amazing, but can you man up a bit? Can you be more masculine a bit? And that time I feel more, naive, that I actually think that there's something wrong with me. And I feel like there was a reason why I need to change to make my tour more manly and masculine. And then at one time, I just was this person that I cannot be someone else. So somehow or other, I was courageous enough to go and find out and do my own research on what does Buddhism think about my sexuality, and which I'm going to share with you later on the next few slides. But what I feel was that there is no reason for me not to be who I am and doing something genuinely in terms of how I practice my Dharma. My behavior shouldn't be an obstacle of why and how I can learn the Dharma. So this is legit and very real. And recently, during the Awaken Challenge, there are 4 members from our community that actually does the whole proposal and the whole ideas of like how we're going to resolve some of the social issues. And 2 of them could not turn up for the presentations because they felt that they are not confident and safe enough to present themselves in the presentation. So this is really, really legit, and it's really happening in our Buddhist community, that even in the temple where love and compassion should be how we practice as a Buddhist, but that was not able to show in the presentation. So some of the statistic is 80% face difficulties coming out to family and friends, and 60% experience bullying in Buddhist spaces locally. Believe it or not, it is really what it is happening here. I just want to make sure that you all can see my slides, right? When I say about all the statistics. Okay, good. Okay, good. Now, doesn't everyone go through suffering? So why is the LGBTQIA plus community different from others? Suffering is suffering. There is no point of thinking who gets more suffering or who deserves more suffering than the others. The question doesn't matter. But at one point is that there are certain struggles and challenges that the other straight community do not have or do not have to go through it in a very sensitive and also vulnerable manner. So I will share a story of during Buddha's lifetime, okay? So at Buddha's time, there is actually a group of people called the untouchable. So they are based on the Indian caste system. So the caste system says that people who are under that group untouchable, they can only do jobs that is cleaner and clearing the feces and also taking care of the dead body, like cremations and all that. So their whole life, their job is only doing the dirty job that people doesn't want to do. So there's a group of people that's called the untouchable. So at that time, Buddha was so amazingly paying attention to this group of people that Buddha ordained this group of people into the Sangha community. So this story tells us that Buddha does pay attention to a special group of people who are treated injustice. And their suffering is very different from the other caste. And one of the very interesting points is when the Buddha starts to ordain the untouchable, At one time, there is the royal family members who are also ordaining at the same time with the untouchable. And in the Sangha community, the seniority goes by whoever ordained first will be the senior. And somehow or other, Buddha knows exactly what is going to happen if I ordained the royal members first, then the untouchable second, then the whole scenario will still be the same group of people listening to the upper class or someone that's more privileged. So what the Buddha did is he ordained the untouchable first. He ordained the untouchable first, then followed by the royal members. So that means that the royal members, after ordination, they have to respect the untouchable as the senior. So I'm not comparing who has the most suffering, but what I'm comparing is the suffering, it cannot be generalized into like me and you are the same. We have to see in a way that our community, in terms of LGBTQIA community, suffers differently through some injustice. That's why we are sharing this talk right now. That's why we are paying a bit more attention on this part of group of people right now. So my question is to you, to everyone here that is in the sharing, does it matter to you or does it matter for you? What would be the Dharma explanation? Does it matter to you or does it matter for you? Now, in the Buddhist teaching, we talk about interdependence. What do you mean by interdependence? It means the world we live in, it's not just by only how I perceive it and how I contribute. It's the whole world plays a part in how we live in this society. So, for example, when I said just now the struggles of the LGBTQIA community, if one person was affected by the injustice or was discriminated, okay, that one person could be your friend, could be your family members, could be your colleagues, and could be someone that you don't know yet. And could be also your child that is not born yet. So, does it matter to you or does it matter for you? This is why I leave it to you all. As you understand the concept of interdependence, whatever community or whatever community is suffering, when a family, one person gets sick, the whole family member are affected by it. So I hope this question can give you a little bit more understanding about why I'm stressing on this topic and why I have to put this part of group separately from other kind of Dharma sharing. Okay, next one. So what did Buddha says about homosexuality? Well, homosexuality is not explicitly mentioned in any of the Buddha's sayings. This has been taken to mean that the Buddha did not consider that one's sexual orientation was relevant to his message, which was how to escape from suffering and realize the truth. Regardless whether one is male or female, heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, everyone has the Buddha's nature within them to attain awakening. So Buddha put it up there. All right, but then again, so why are we still confused about whether homosexuality is somehow morally wrong? It's so interesting. Part of me, even somehow I find that Buddha has said there's nothing wrong, part of me, is still feeling that there's something wrong with me. Why is that so? And why are people still having this misconception about homosexuality is somehow morally wrong in the Buddhist community? Now, I'm going to divide that into a few different schools of thoughts. All right. So from the screens right now you saw, those people who support and neutral in the LGBTQIA community are mostly the Theravada traditions. And also we have the Mahayana tradition, but not a lot, a few of them. And on the other side of non-supportive and ambiguity, is the Tibetan Buddhism, which is specifically to Galupas and the Imam school, where under the Guru's teaching, when I say Guru's teaching, it means that under the teachings from a very amazing Buddhist teacher, they mentioned that homosexual act is a sexual misconduct. And certain Thai and Burmese traditions and Mahayana traditions, only certain group, they have this understanding that based on a certain cultural aspect and conditioning, they say that it's wrong. So at this stage, we must separate each teacher's personal interpretation from the teachings of Buddha. Now, if I'm still confused, if I'm still wrong, all right, where do I start? Where do I start to get the roots of understanding that view is right or wrong? All right? And I will say that on the next slide, the 5 precepts for the lay person. So the only way for a lay person as a Buddhist to understand whether homosexual act is wrong or not is based on the 5 precepts. In this sharing, I'm not going to do anything regarding to the monastic. That means I'm not going to go through the monastic precepts because as for us right now, it's not relevant to you because you are not going to become a monk yet. I'll touch a little bit, but not in a very detailed manner. So the 5 precepts for the lay person is the most general guide for all of us as a Buddhist. And some Buddhists do not even follow 5 precepts. So we do not have to ensure that those who follow 5 precepts and those who do not follow 5 precepts, it's not a way to gauge whether you need to follow or not. But some people do feel that following the 5 precepts can help them in terms of their cultivations, right? So Buddhists should follow the 5 precepts to ensure they are living a morally good life. This helps them to get rid of suffering and achieve, get rid of unnecessary suffering and achieve enlightenment. All right. These precepts express basic principles. They are not like fixed, you know. They usually refrain us from doing it, you know. And we are not making judgment like if you do this, this is your punishment. If you do that, there's your punishment. Because the punishment doesn't come from anyone. The punishment comes from your own personal responsibility. So the moral judgment is never a question of blindly applying a rule, but it is determined by more on the cause and consequences from the actions that you do. All right? And then the next one. So what are the 5 precepts? Remember, and just take note, when I use this slide, I didn't use to not. I said refrain. So refrain from taking life, refrain from taking what is not given, refrain from the misuses of the senses or sexual misconduct, refrain from wrong speech, and refrain from intoxicants that clear the mind. All right? So the 5 precepts constitute an integrated set. Each precept supports the others. So to know what sexual misconduct means, you will look at the other precepts. For example, sexual misconduct. In the spirits of the precepts as you know, an actions or a kind of actions or a manner or what, it means that any sexual misconduct involving violence, manipulations, deceits, conduct that therefore leads to suffering and trouble. By contrast, good sexual conduct is based on loving kindness, generosity, honesty, and mental and emotional clarity conduct, then that is the good sexual misconduct. So the other opposite than this will be the it's actually not sexual misconduct, sorry. Those who actually have a certain loving kindness that goes into the sexual acts, then that is okay. Those which are opposite from this will be the sexual misconduct. So the third precept about sexual misconduct is very superfluous. You know, if in our sexual lives we act non-violently, do not take what is freely given, and do not deceive and do not act out of delusive and irresponsible mind states, then we cannot fall foul of the third precept. So I hope this part is clear for everyone. And do take note, if you have any questions, you can always put it in the chat and I will come back to you later. Now, if you're still confused about sexual misconduct, okay, still confused about it, the Buddha made this same point in the Dhammapada, okay? The deed which causes remorse afterwards and results in weeping and tears is ill done. And that doesn't just me alone, to the other person as well, to the other party. The deed which causes no remorse afterwards, which results in joy and happiness, is well done. This is what might be called the consequential principles, that behavior can be considered good or bad according to the consequences or effect it has. So if you still don't understand how to distinguish what is the wholesome and unwholesome behavior, so the Buddha says that any behavior that causes harm to oneself and others could be called blameworthy, while any behavior that causes no harm and presumably which helps oneself and others could be called praiseworthy. So the suggestion is, therefore, that in determining right and wrong one, we have to look into actual and possible consequences of the action in relation to the agent and those affected by the actions. Following this principle, the behavior can be considered good or bad according to the consequences or effect it has. So, summary. In conclusion, Buddhism does not see homosexuality as wrong and heterosexuality is right. Both are desires within the body and are both strong expressions of lust. When increased the desire for life, this then causes us to be trapped in the samsara for a longer period of time. And by the way, the picture is me. That is me when I was a monk. So I can't say that, or as a gay person, I don't feel any difference in my sexuality when I become a monk. I actually feel there's a bit of clarity and more into the advanced mindset about that impermanence and also the idea of I myself has a nature, Buddha nature, to go ahead and seek for liberation and nirvana. So now we're talking about LGBTQIA plus community. We'll talk about the Dharma aspect of the the precepts and everything. And I want to add one more thing. I don't think I'm too far off by saying that any forms of prejudice, discrimination, violence, or violations based on those prejudices are against the Buddha's teaching. That means that if there's any kind of discrimination going on, I can say that that's against what the Buddha has taught us, or what the four Brahma Viharas actually taught us, which is loving kindness and karuna, which is the compassion. So not only did Buddha did not waste a word of condemnation on non-procreative sex, but inspired thousands to ordain into celibate monastic. So that means that if there's someone who decided that, sex is wrong, no, sex is not wrong, but he encouraged us more to this part of life, if you decided it's not useful for a spiritual practice, that you can always go ahead and ordain as a sangha. So then you can have a less mundane responsibility to fulfill, but rather to have a more practical sense on pursuing the spiritual path wholeheartedly. So again, please remember this point, because Buddhism has nothing against sex. We're not saying that, sex is wrong. If sex is so wrong, I don't know why you're here now, right? So if you practice skillfully in the spirits of the precepts, even sexual acts can bring a lot of happiness in bonding love and kindness with your partner. There's nothing wrong with dancing lightly with your desires, as long as both can hear the music and all hearts are opened. And some people, I'm not going to go through the tantric part, but some people with a very skillful means, sex could be also part of a way of mindfulness training as well. So I'm not going to go into the tantric version of it, because that is another sharing already. But just to let you know that, if your mind is your body is having a wonderful time with a cuddly friend, with your cuddly friends, if your mind is not having a miserable time obsessing about the people you hate or holding grudges about someone that you hate, then that part of the activities can be very conducive and very wholesome as well. And I have to say that, like when I went to overseas and see a few different Dharma schools and Dharma centers, when I see them being so open about talking about the presence of the gays and lesbians or the LGBTQIA community, especially recently when I heard about Ajahn Brahm mentioning about our community, it feels such a relief, such a relief to know that, we are somehow included into this community, the Dharma community. So sexuality is not an issue. And this aspect of our identity is affirmed as straightforwardly as anyone else. So if you're straight, you're gay, you're gay. Everyone's structure of sexual desire is unique. So when we leave the social conditioning, or the social influence and the cultural context, we don't have to set a certain view on what is right and wrong. And as long as we are practicing the Dharma wholeheartedly, we shouldn't have any fears. And Buddhism does have a strong sexual ethic, but not a repressive one. The main point of this ethic is in a non-harming way. So that's why the precept is not just gut harming people, but it's also gut ourselves in how we gut our minds into trouble or into harmful states. So, this precepts, if it is not ill will, if it's not taking the non-given, and if it's not from deceitful, and if it's just not harming anyone, Buddhism certainly do not have this kind of prejudice and inhibitions associated with the cultural idea and concept that is put on us, put on the LGBTQIA plus community. So some Buddhists have a very traditional background. Recently, I was at a sharing and there is someone who said that I'm homophobic because I come from a very traditional family background. He said that out loud to me in the sharing that I was doing. So a lot of times there are people which is in the Buddhist community, and I say this to my fellow LGBTQIA plus community, that they will have this situation that arises, but just remember that, using loving kindness always, to tell them that, probably this is the best part of how we can bridge an understanding about why you think is wrong, and have that enough compassion and be patient with them to, if you feel there's a need to say and defend it, that would be great. If you don't, always let them be, and at the right time, obviously, hopefully we will find that peace within us, that regardless what people are saying that we are wrong from a traditional background or from oppressions from others, we will always have the kindness and the compassion to take care of our mind and be able to clarify and explain it with wisdoms and compassionate way. So just want to share this part with you, that you can confidently tell anyone who express these sorts of attitudes that they have nothing to do with Dharma, nothing to do with Dharma. And I'm going to just put it out there as well. Today, what I'm sharing is based on my research and based on my understanding of Dharma and based in terms of the context of Dharma. And obviously, you do not have to believe in me. So I urge you to go back to the Karma Sutta of investigating the truth yourself. And what is the truth? What is the right teachings? If those that benefit you and other people, then that's the right teaching. All right, so far, so good. If no, I will move to the next one. All right. So what are our goals as a Buddhist? So the goal is Nirvana. So Nirvana does not discriminate. Buddha does not discriminate. The goal to Nirvana is the same regardless of their sexuality or gender. Unless you step into the monastic life, You have to leave behind your past and practice diligently to understand the Dharma and achieve the way to develop. So what I'm trying to say is that I hope this part is very clear for everyone here. And that is why I hope this sharing can give a bit of clarity on the doubts and confusions that you have. Now, so what are the misconceptions that usually have in our Buddhist community? So you will be surprised that people use Dharma and argue back on justifying why we are wrong, why why the LGBTQIA community, why the sexual activity, why our gender, why our sexuality is wrong. So the misinterpretation of non-self. Right. I don't know about you as a Buddhist practitioner. I think most of us have understand the idea of emptiness or non-self very differently, and somehow I think we misunderstood the idea of non-self. Okay, non-self is actually part of a duality of self. So what does that mean? So if you are saying that, like, oh, you are non-self, so your sexuality doesn't matter, because everyone practicing the Dharma is non-self. Now, if you hold this idea, then you're going to be very, very risky, because people still differentiate male and female monks. People still differentiate on the idea of young and old, novice or senior monk. People still differentiate on the different traditions of the school of thoughts. So when you say non-self, that means that you're actually saying that it's a non-duality. So like I explained, non-self is a way of investigating that the current self that you hold on to is an illusion. All right? It's an illusion. So what does that mean? So currently right now, the self in a very conventional way is still there. You are still a man. You are still a gay. You are still have an eyes. You still have a nose. But when all these things adds up, and if you go into investigation, each of them is interdependently existed. So that means that the self is there, but the self is also not there if you go through the analysis. But you cannot say the self is entirely not there, because you are still you. When you are outside the world, you are still doing good merit. That part of you is still there, making the action, doing good merits. So this part of it, just have to understanding that when we start to say everyone is non-self, it's going to be very, very dangerous. That means people could just do whatever they want and say whatever they want, because non-self, whatever I do doesn't matter. But this is not what the Buddha's intention is. So the Buddha intentions is not to cling and obsess with the identities, because ultimately, if you go through this part of analysis, the self does not exist independently. There is no independent entity or this thing called self. So this is why a lot of people, the gay community, suffer, because they're always trying to be ignore that your identity basically doesn't matter. But it does matter, because in the conventional world, in the conventional Dharma, that part still exists. Unless you are enlightened, unless you already go through all the different stages of Arahanthood, or unless you already enlightened the understanding of non-self, then when you say that, then that makes sense. But if you're not, all of us still do have that non-duality, which is self and non-self. So far, is it okay? I know this is a bit deep, but hopefully it will bring you some kind of insight. All right, the next one. So now, after talking so much, that all this thing about, the LGBTQIA suffering, we talk about, the precepts, that say there's nothing wrong. So moving forward, okay? what is our current situation? What are we supposed to do now? Like, why is it that, how do we make sure that, we can be more inclusive for our group, for the LGBTQIA group and community in the Buddhist settings? Right. The first thing, or the so-called, not the first thing, but the most obvious thing you can do is do not even feel like there is morally wrong in the LGBTQIA groups. So with the certain kind of support and affirmation that telling the LGBTQIA group that it's all right to be who I am, it is okay to be who you are, that helps a great deal. And even if someone coming up to you and say that they are gay, lesbian, just the idea of thinking that, oh, it's absolutely fine. That is a big, big deal. So, like, this is one of the quotes from someone when he started hating himself for being a bisexual. He said the most empowering thing is to be believed and validated. Find someone who believes you and get you through the day. It might not be a mom or a dad or a teacher. It might be a friend, or it might even be someone online. So if anyone here feels that they are morally or mentally something wrong with you, and I say that not just for the LGBTQIA group of community, but I say that to anyone, please understand that as long as Dharma, or as long as you're not harming anyone and harming yourself, what you're doing is absolutely fine. So that shouldn't have this anxiety and added pressure from this part of the Buddhist community that you need to fight against them. All right? Except for those who think otherwise, that would be a different story. All right. How about if you are a straight, if you are not, if you're heterosexual, okay? Being an ally is an act of friendship and compassion, okay? So being an ally, what does that mean? That means that ally acknowledge that this community faces social disadvantage, and because they come from a background as a straight person, they ever have the privilege to somehow counter-attack discriminations, because an ally is someone who do not feel like, oh, they are our community, but yet identifies that they need to support our group. So we are not trying to be biased in the sense that if an ally, a straight ally, can support us, so why not everyone? So that part of it is to just have that privilege, because you acknowledge the suffering that we have, but you also feel like because you have empathy to feel what we are feeling. So somehow or other, as a straight person, to say that and support us makes such a strong statement than just a gay person or a lesbian person saying supporting us. So this is something that is very, very crucial. Yeah, and it will help people to do the work of explaining the issues to the experience in the world, So if you have time, listen to us, this is why you're having this, coming to this sharing. By listening to this sharing, by understanding what the struggles that LGBTQIA people are going through, by educating yourself, by understand, different sexuality, how they are, who they are individually, that is the best, to be an ally to others and to us especially, because we feel even greater support, because we finally find someone who can being with us and going through this journey with us, that we felt a little bit less stress and less worries. Next thing is to promote inclusions. Okay, so if you are from any one of the Buddhist community, any Buddhist groups or Buddhist organizations, just always good to remember that in your group, not all of them are straight. If you think all of them are straight, probably some of them are still hidden in the closet. So do not assume that everyone is straight, and that do not tell someone's gender. Like if I'm very obvious, and then you will start to up them, hey, are you gay? You know, or like other stuff. That give them proper time to come up to you. And by acknowledging people at the top, like hello. Usually I do that. I say hello everyone. I do not say hello boys and girls or hello ladies and gentlemen, because most of the people may not feel that they are neither man or male or female. So using a more inclusive term like hello fabulous beings, hello sentient beings, hello lady, hello, like everyone, that could be one of a very good way to address the crowd differently, so that it will be more inclusive, to make them feel that they are visible in the community. And a lot of times they might feel so scared to open to their identities, but maybe if you just start by acknowledging them, they might feel more safe and comfortable to come up to the Buddhist community, because they are not sure whether are you accepting or not. Are you genuinely okay with this our group of people, which is the LGBTQIA plus community? And most of the time, they might actually have very bad experience, with certain Buddhists or certain Buddhist groups. I'm not going to go in deeper of what the famous saga of this year, what one of the Buddhist organization has said publicly in the press, that creates a lot of hatred within the Buddhist community and also between the LGBTQIA plus people. So that is something that we can really see out there, that how destructive it is if we don't do it in a skillful way and a compassionate way. All right. And celebrate diversity, equality in diversity. So there are many ways Buddhist individuals and organizations can show support for the rainbow community. Sometimes putting a rainbow flag in the temple, could be also one way. And also, just the whole Buddhist community can have a bit of awareness about our group, and have take time to understand that what our group needs, and how our groups behave, and that will probably help a lot in the diversity, and encourage other Buddhist organizations to do the same thing as well, using poster or stickers to let the community know that you have a safe space for us. We want to learn the Dharma, and mention that your organization welcomes and supports LGBTQIA plus people at talks and events, or even make an effort to invite the LGBTQIA people to participate in your events. That would be amazing. That would be so amazing. So in here, I like to do a bit of summary and share a bit of quotes from the Dharma teacher. So this quote is from Ajahn Sujato. The very essence of compassion is to reach out to those who are suffering, those who are marginalized and persecuted. People whose sexual orientation varies from the majority suffer discriminations, bullying at school, violence, and emotional trauma. As Buddhists, we should recognize a clear moral imperative to help whenever we can. That's from Ajahn Sujato. And from one of the Rinpoche, he says that, emphasize that for lay practitioners, homosexual relationships are no better or worse than heterosexual relationships, and emphasize only unhealthy relationships were to be avoided. So there is no differences in our love and our idea of who we like and who we love. And the next quote is from Xingyu Fashi, one of my favorite teachers from Foguangshan. People often ask me what I think about homosexuality. They wonder, is it right? Is it wrong? The answer, it is neither right nor wrong. It's just something that people do. If people are not harming each other, their private lives are their own business, and we should be tolerant of them and not reject them. And then Tsongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, your sexual orientation has nothing to do with understanding or not understanding the truth, or so-called the Dharma. Now, so following after we come to nearly to the end of this talk, So whatever that's spoken into, we have a booklet called Welcoming the Rainbow. It is on the website, and you can download the PDF for more information about it. It introduces basic LGBTQIA+ terminology and explains practical steps for Buddhist organizations can take to help make Buddhist spaces more safe and welcoming for the LGBTQIA+ people. And for everyone who are going through certain kind of struggles, and I would recommend that on our resources page, we have counseling, from different groups of Buddhist organizations. They can help to ease some of the struggles and negativity that you face. And I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you. And we'll come back to the Q&A.
Thank you, Carl, for sharing. So for the Q&A, for those who are shy, perhaps you can key your questions into the chat if you're shy, because the meeting is being recorded, but only for internal use. We will not be putting this up. And if you put your questions in the group chat, I'll be happy to read it out for Carl. And just to start things off, Carl, can I ask a difficult question?
Yes, please, please, please.
So maybe you're not expecting this, but yeah, I was curious, how would you answer people who might refer to the Vinayas, which is the monastic code, right? When there are references to Pandakas or Upayavyenjanakas, what would you say to people who point those out? And yeah.
So you see, this is why I put it very specifically, right? I wanted to address the issue more for the layperson. And if someone actually used that part of the precepts, right, then you can always tell them that by right, any sexual acts is not legit or is not possible if you ordain as a Sangha member. So in terms of those, and we can identify Panaka, which is intersex people. And after that, we have the
Upayavyenjanaka.
Yeah, so that's probably for people who are impotent, which means that they cannot have their fertility issues. So now, if you do not belong to this group of people, I would rather say that there is not much you need to defend, because ultimately it does not show you morally the sexual act of homosexual sexual act is wrong, or loving between one man to one man and one woman and one woman is wrong. So going back to the precept is only applicable for those who want to ordain to the Sangha. And even if that part of thinking that there's a discrimination of the transgenders, or discrimination in terms of gay people, or discrimination in terms of people who are intersex, it's not because so much so of that they cannot understand the Dharma awakening, but it's more on getting into the Sangha. And in terms of the practice, is for them to go through in terms of the body, physically, the aspect of it, how they are going to blend in and live in the Sangha monastic. So it's a practical reason, not a Dharma and morally right and wrong reason.
Thank you very much.
Does that explain and answer you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yes, please ask questions.
Yeah, I think what's the time now? Oh, sorry.
There are also intersex and non-binary and trans people who ordain as monastics, I think.
Yes, but then in the end, no, you're right. But in the end, they have to choose to go back to one of the male or female form in order to go to the ordinations. So that part, they cannot deny that. So one of the very famous example is one of the Thai transgender who won the Miss Tiffany ultimately has to undone her surgery in terms of the female form to a male form to ordain as a Sangha. So that says in the past he is or she is still a transgender, but when you go through ordinations, that part of it is you have to make it very obvious before you ordain as a Sangha. Now, then you have people who ordain as a Sangha and then make it very clear that he is trans-supportive, he is queer, he is lesbian, he is gay, then that doesn't matter, because that term, after becoming a Sangha, is a label of his sexuality way before he was a Sangha, way before she was a Sangha, to create more inclusiveness. But in actual fact, to be ordained, the body physical aspect of part, right, have to be very specific, defined as male or female.
Thank
Does
you.
that answer your question? Yeah.
I think like I personally would not agree with that approach, but yeah, I mean that's how things are done in some places. I think last time I did ask Bante Akaliko, and he also did say that he knew of a non-binary monastic who kind of like live by themselves lah, because like having to fit into the binary genders is just it's just not conducive for them. So I think I mean, personally, yeah, I feel that it's really important to include. And I think in the Buddhist community, I mean, yeah, there's more awareness now of like, non-binary and like gender neutral bathrooms and things like that. So I think some of it is partly, social, cultural also.
Please don't get me wrong. I think you're mistaken the part of ordaining in terms of the body form, and after ordaining, you can always be non-binary, you can always be trans, you can always be queer, but it's just that at the part when doing ordination, you still have to pick one sex in order to go through ordination. So this is the scholastic monastic precepts and how it is supposed to be imposed. But after when you ordain, it doesn't matter whether you're queer, doesn't matter you are intersex, doesn't matter whether you are non-binary. So don't get this wrong. So if not, then you are giving a very wrong impressions that we are still discriminating the other groups to becoming a Sangha, because we do have very good example of non-binary Sangha as well. They already put it out there.
So it's just the case that they have to choose, they have to choose to ordain as a male or female lah, but how they practice after ordination is also nothing to do with that. So
yeah, like example, if I ordain as a nun, then I probably have to understand that if I go to the temple, should I stay in the nunnery or should I stay with the monks? And it's a very practical reason why this is imposing. It's not because of don't have the negative aspect of discriminating them. It's more on the very logistic and practical reason why they have to choose a form or a gender in order to ordain. But after that, they can be non-binary, they can be queer. It's already out there. It's very obvious in our community. There's already monks that are non-binary and queer as well. Even Bante Akariko has declared that he's a queer monk, very specifically. But he has to be a male in order to ordain as a monk. Yeah.
Actually,
Any
I
more
think this
questions?
discussion, yeah. So as people are thinking of questions, I'll put the Rainbodhi Telegram broadcast channel in case you want to follow future events that we conduct. We conduct temple tours, picnics, and care and share Dharma sharings every month. So yeah, please feel free to put your questions in the group chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask Carl directly.
And you can ask me any question. It doesn't have to be LGBTQIA related. You can ask me about the part. What does non-self mean as well? Because usually a lot of people have questions, but surprisingly no one has a question on this one. Or maybe if they don't mind, if they can share a bit of, you don't have to, like mute, you don't have to unmute, or you can always share what are the struggles that you see that we can do to make it better, or
there's a question sent by a direct message. So because the person is shy. So the person said, would love to hear your opinion. Is gender inherently existent? And if not, how does it exist? So just to repeat again, for those who might not hear it, the question is, would love to hear your opinion. Is gender inherently existent? And if not, how does it exist?
Through the body form, it exists. Okay? If we are talking about form, it exists. In terms of mentality, that is tricky. You know what I mean?
Can you elaborate, actually? I'm quite curious.
So for example, right, you said does it inherently existed, right? So when you're born, you are already been defined and categorized to be a boy or girl, right? So that part inherently, that is, you existed as that part already, right? So but then as you grow, you notice that mentally you don't feel aligned with this body that was given to you. Am I alright to say that? So then you cannot say that it's inherently existed, because then the part of it is that there's always a struggle between the body and the mind. Right? So what you can always do is that part of the existence is to, if in the Dharma context, is to investigate further, how does this matters to you, and how does this able to help you to see the truth or the understanding of where you can get the ease and the peace on the acceptance parts. So the existence doesn't matter in terms of the, if we're talking about the Dharma context, right? The existence is basically a kind of suffering. If if you're still in samsara world, you still have to go through suffering. The idea of it, the idea of even thinking about this question is already a cause of suffering. So what will help you to go beyond this, to find the ease and peace on acceptance on how this gender comes? That's that. Is it elaborate a bit further already?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation, because I mean, just to add on, I think I can't remember if it was a monastic I spoke to or a lay person, but like if we talk about reincarnation, some people believe that you are not necessarily reincarnated as the same gender you were. So maybe perhaps so the implications are tremendous, right? So perhaps trans people, maybe if like I am assigned female at birth and I identify as a non-binary girl, but perhaps maybe the reason why I identify as non-binary is perhaps in my previous lifetime I was a male person. And or perhaps for trans people, maybe the reason why they feel misaligned their gender would be because of a different form they took in the past life. So I think I can't remember who I had this conversation with, but I thought it's an interesting implication. So like the gender you're assigned at birth, and then how you grow up is a cultural construct, but it could be that yeah, interesting to contemplate. And I see Philip has unmuted, and you want to ask a question, Philip?
Hi,
Actually, can I make hey, hello, how are you all?
Hi.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Actually, this discrimination in the Vinaya with regards to LGBTQ is not only our issue, it's also females also, especially in Thailand. You know, in Thailand, the bhikkhunis are not respected. In fact, they are not they are not recognized by the two you know lineage in Thailand, because the Vinaya, you know, although, you know, in its purest form, I like to say that, you know, when we talk about the Sangha, we take refuge in the noble Sangha, not in the, you know, so much, you know, the institutional Sangha, because the institutional Sangha is still not perfect. It's a human institution. And you see in the main Buddhist countries, it's a very patriarchal system. So not only are we suffering, even had women per se, actually, their Sangha is not recognized by the Sangha Raja and, you know, the lineages, like, for example, in Thailand and even other Theravada countries, they are struggling. And because this is an institution, it's a patriarchal institution, unfortunately. And, you know, we have, you know, when we talk about LGBTQ+, also even women, we live in a male, unfortunately, male-dominated society. One more thing that you mentioned, Carl, is that LGBTQ people, you know, face discrimination even in their family members. Minority groups, you know, whatever. I live in US for 30 years. So the Black people there, they are discriminated against. But you see, they grow up in families that protect them. So, you know, I'm a Black person, but my parents are also Black and they protect me. LGBTQ people are a little bit different. Even in the families that we grew up with, they oftentimes, the, you know, sad cases, they don't support us at all. So, you know, society don't support, your own family don't support. So we have to support one another.
Right.
Right.
Philip, do you come later, the talk? Do you come in the beginning or you come in the middle?
About 20 minutes later.
So I think you might have left out the family rejection part that I was spoken and shared earlier on in the sharing. And can I also just make sure that everyone do not have a misconception about the feminism, or the idea of the female Sangha? If I could share a bit more background with Philip, is the reason why Theravada do not recognize a fully ordained bhikkhuni or nun is because the lineage from the Theravada nun or the bhikkhuni's part of it, right, has been lost after 1,000 years. So the Theravada part do not have someone legit enough to continue the official ordination for a fully ordained nun. So that means 1,000 years before, there is Theravada nun. There is official Theravada nun, but it's just that the lineage is already lost. So the Theravada school cannot make an official ordination for the nuns, and that's why they can only do the 10 precepts rather than a fully ordained precepts. Having said that, I also thank you for bringing it up that the equality is never equal. Like in the Buddhist community, we can definitely see a kind of inequality from the female part. Like even Mahayana have fully ordained nuns. So the reason why Mahayana and Vajrayana, they have the fully ordained nun that follows the 332 precepts is because the lineage from the Mahayana side and the Vajrayana side was not lost. So whoever that is officially did the ordination way before Buddha's lifetime, after Buddha's lifetime, still exists as we speak right now. So that's why they can fully ordain nuns from the Mahayana school and the Vajrayana school, but not the Theravada school. So, but I can agree and say that there's definitely inequality that we see. Like for example, if we go to a Buddhist events, if we go to any Buddhist organizations, the nun part and the monk part somehow is always treated a little bit differently from one another. Like, in terms of offering wise, in terms of support wise, you can see that is quite obvious. But nonetheless, I just want to make it very clear that the Dharma, the Vinaya has never discriminated anything about, pro man or pro woman, nothing enough. Vinaya don't do that. It's the practical reason of how the lineage goes that differentiate that. Whether you can ordain a nun fully or cannot ordain a nun fully. So then back to the family rejection. Oh, don't get me there. I've seen some of my friends when I was growing up at the age of 21, they have to run away from homes because the family cannot accept them. And as a transgender, it becomes even more worse because they're more obvious and they have to really, I'm very, I feel I don't even have the courage. So I really acknowledge all the transgenders who make a path to show me what is bravery and courage. Even at one time, I just feel so like, I don't understand them. I don't know why they're doing this, but now I felt that to be able to stand up and be who you are is such an incredible and remarkable way of living. And yeah. Good. Any more questions? Anyone know? No questions? No questions. I want to do dedication of merits already.
I think maybe I have some comments lah. So I feel that practicing Buddhism helps me to kind of deal with like homophobia and facing like discrimination and all that, whether discrimination like directed at me or directed at others that I care about lah, because there's a lot of anger and all that. And I think the practice of the 4 Brahma Viharas is very essential to carrying out activism work. Actually, I'm following this do I say activist? He's a trans yoga teacher. His name's Jacoby Banat. Yeah. So like he a lot of like his practice and yoga is very like Dharma centric and is like around like the Brahma Viharas lah. I feel that that's a very, very good, like nourishing kind of antidote, because I think what I see a lot in the world in social justice is, like people they are very angry and there's a lot of fear and all that, because I mean, because the world itself is problematic and there's a lot of discrimination going on, and I get really consumed by anger when I see some of these things. And I think being able to talk about it with like Buddhists or people who are like practicing and all that, and yeah, kind of being able to, yeah, you definitely, I think, yeah, spirituality is needed in order to balance. And I think equanimity is a big quality that we need to, that I personally have trouble with, and that I think we need to cultivate when we are doing this work, because it's really, really not easy. And I also feel that I think, the idea of the human experience being not just confined to male, female, or heterosexual or allosexual, like, the kind of regular sexual and romantic attraction. I feel that it's very in line with Buddhism, because it's like there's nothing so fixed anyway. And even if you look at like somebody who is assigned male or female at birth, like nobody, like most people actually don't go and look at your chromosomes and what you have, and there's no one set of genes that makes somebody male or female. It's a combination of a lot of factors. So I feel that a lot of these things, they are very in line with the Buddhism, and non-self and non-duality lah. And the people who are opposed to this are kind of attached onto certain limiting notions that actually isn't, it just isn't the way things are lah. So just some interesting things.
Well, thank you for sharing. Well, first of all, I just have to say to my all dear Dharma brother and sister, if your Dharma knowledge, if your Dharma practice do not help you to overcome your anger, do not help you to overcome your disappointment, do not help you to overcome your darkest time, change another religion. Please, please change it. And if you feel like you're struggling with your own anger and thing, practice harder. Practice way harder and harder, because that is the only way you can break through. If not, you'll always forever be in this part of the journey. And like I say, like most probably just find it within yourself, that ease and that peace. So if there's no more question, I will prefer to go ahead and then do the dedication of merits. All right, so everyone just slightly, sit at the comfortable positions. At one time, just gather all your thoughts for the people who are feeling the injustice and the suffering and the struggles they're going through right now. And as I speak the word, you can always repeat after me, and hopefully whatever merits that you gain throughout this sharing will be sent to them. So may everyone be happy. May everyone be healthy in body and mind. May everyone be safe and protected from mental and physical harm. May everyone be free from fear that keeps them stuck. May everyone move through this world with joy and peace. And I thank you for coming and listening to this sharing. Thank you. I'll still be here for those who knows me, and if you'd like to unmute and talk to me or anything, I'm here. If not, have a good time, have a good day. Let me stop recording now.